So this again, huh? Blizzard did it again, meaning their newest biggest game is the fastest selling in the history of the company. Diablo 4. That's funny, cause I still remember sitting in the computer class playing Diablo 1 demo, back in like 97 or 98. This series really moves forward at the snail pace, and no wonder, we had like 12 years between Diablo 2 and 3, with not much better 11 years between 3rd and 4th installment. I do not know if it's good or bad, and I don't even care, to be honest. What I care about is if the game is actually good, and if I can recommend it. I played all of the previous titles in the series, including infamous Diablo Immortal. I was competing on the leaderboards back in Diablo 3 Reaper of Souls, alongside my brother and some friends, so I think I have a decent comprehension of what Diablo games are and what they are not. With all of that said, let's check out if the newest entry is worth your money and time. Story in the Diablo series is a really hard topic to discuss. I would compare it to the Elden Ring dilemma. It is not core of the game, but always present and looming in the background, ever reminding itself by environmental storytelling. However, in Diablo 4 we got more direct approach to the narration. Yes, the beginning that uses high quality brutal and dark cinematic is similar to the approach in Diablo 2, but as you progress through the campaign you see that it is more similar to the style we have seen in Diablo 3. Completely linear quest chain that leads us to the final conclusion of the base game. But let's not get hasty, we should begin from the start. The beginning is very simple, cliché we could even say. Powerful demon Lilith, the daughter of hatred, is released from her prison and soon she starts to corrupt the people along her way, making them into bloodthirsty sinners. Standard trope for horrors and thrillers in books, films and games alike. Our job is to hunt her down alongside with her faithful sidekick Elias. We go on the wild goose chase, and on our way several characters gonna aid us in our efforts, as it is often in this kind of tale. But you and your companions are not the only ones who wanna stop Lilith. There is also Inarius and his followers in the form of Cathedral of Light. They still believe that destroying Lilith foretold in the prophecy will bring Inarius and his followers into high heavens. I, on the other hand, think that is simply bullcrap or naive wishful thinking at best. Last but not least, we got one of the prime evils as a subtle side of the conflict, Mephisto, the Lord of the Hatred and Lilith's father. I might even risk a statement that he is the best written character in the whole of Diablo 4. Maybe because we got so little of him on screen, and he is not revealing all that he could, so the veil of mystery still remains, and he has potential to be a major part in the continuation of the story, as the game progresses with the updates in the future. When it comes to other characters, I am not so sure that they can be used in a meaningful and not contrived way again. And talking about doing it again, this is yet another time when we are using a soulstone. Oh my gosh, I really wish that the people responsible for the plot in Diablo games could come with some new idea when it comes to fighting off the evils. Especially when the best chance the sanctuary has to survive is a random vagabond that we actually know the least about, and that's the character you are going to roleplay as. One thing that I had problem with when it comes to the storytelling in this newest entry in the series is that lesser evils were treated with not much respect. They supposed to be the force to be reckoned with. They overthrew the prime evils and kicked them out of hell to the mortal realm after all. But in Diablo 4 they are brushed off with not much effort and put on the sidelines. Well, you could say that it was similar in Diablo 2 and 3, but I do not agree with that sentiment. Mainly because they were very well built before we met and fought them. All the sources written and oral were talking about them in a very careful manner. The build-ups were very strong and fights themselves were demanding and pretty good mechanically, as far as I can remember. In Diablo IV, not so much. We need to come back to Inarius for a moment here. I was right when it comes to him. He is presented here as a weak and incompetent archangel. Like, what the hell? I understand that they wanted to picture him as flawed and with certain weaknesses, but there is a proper way to do it. For example, Tyrael, even when he made so many mistakes and maybe ultimately left the mankind worse off than they were before, the whole shebang with destroying Wordstone and making himself mortal, he was pictured as a being full of devotion, fighting for what he believed. Ultimately, despite his obvious flaws, he was portrayed in a very interesting way. On the other hand, we got Inarius, whose story could be so badass that is beyond belief. But instead we are left with this weakling that does not understand the consequences of his actions in the slightest. Next to him, Lilith looks like a best character ever written in the history of writing, and she is all but that. For me, her depiction fall flat as well. But not to the same degree as Inarius, that was castrated of all he could have been in Diablo IV. Things are even worse, cause now the fans of lore in the series can view the events that led to the creation of Sanctuary as an action of the coward and not a brave rebel, and it is not meaningless to say the least. It all now casts the shadow of a doubt on the very foundation of Sanctuary's rightful place in the universe. Oh man, my head hurts when I think about it, but I guess this is what we get from modern writers. Wait, maybe I am spewing nonsense as well, as I am pressing key after key on this board. And by the way, where was Inarius when we fought all the hell loose in previous games? Well, maybe that was the time when he was being tortured in hell. It is not specified. The whole Diablo timeline is spotty and iffy at best. The resolution to the story in this title was a little bit surprising for me, but at the same time, and most likely by design. It does not set anything in stone, so we have no idea how it's gonna be developed in updates for the game. If I was more optimistic, I could see myself waiting with hope for the exploration of this story in the future, but since I am middle-aged balding realist, I am pretty sure it's gonna be a mixed bag again. But main storyline is not the only tale told here. We got plenty of side quest plots as well, and here I can be more impressed to tell the truth. It is really visceral feeling helping ordinary people with their ordinary and extraordinary problems, regardless if you succeed in the end or not. The side stories made me feel like I had a real impact on everyday folk lives, no matter if it was for better or for worse. Some of the side quests are set up in chains so you can get to know particular stories in more detail. I liked them a lot, maybe because they made the presented world in Diablo IV the strongest element of the game. Let's get back to the ending of campaign here for a second. When I entered Deep Hells in Diablo II, that was epic and meaningful, same as entering High Heavens in Diablo III. In D4, Hell chapter is very short and unsatisfying. I was really disappointed. And where the hell is Diablo in the Diablo game? Fortunately, gameplay is pleasant, like in every single entry in the series. Inputs are responsive, animations fluid, all is really top-notch when it comes to the feeling and feedback you get during combat. One thing is funny though, Whirlwind Barbarian is so nice to play, but it is kinda hard for me to enjoy fully other builds and classes, same was in Diablo 3, I just wanna spin to win for eternity. The big controversy, the lack of a transparent map. It seems it was all a storm in the glass of water. Many thought it was a big deal, but in reality you get used to minimap glancing, and from time to time you're gonna open the big map to make your navigation routed. So that's that, no big deal, no big scene. But hold on, wait a minute, not so fast. Mount in the game is what will bring down your experience of traversing the lands of Sanctuary. Riding it is stiff, clunky and unintuitive. Let's start from the backside, so to speak. After you dismount, there are different cooldowns durations for mounting again, depending on several variables. This is madness, quite frankly. And the riding itself doesn't make much sense when it comes to controls on PC. Your horse is moving slower the closer your cursor is to it. Bloody hell. It feels really bad and it should be changed as soon as possible, but I do not think that we'll do it, sadly. There are some other stupid things like obvious logical errors in gameplay. For example, your character says that they must destroy the tumors to unlock the passage in one of campaign quests. Your avatar could not know that before even seeing one connected to the door by the system of diabolical veins. Maybe I'm just nitpicking here, but that was the first thing that struck me in the game as incompetent, so maybe that's why it was bothering me so much. But let's go back to combat for a moment here. Don't get me wrong, the enemies, when it comes to how they look and move, are very good on technical level, but the more I played, the more I was coming to the realization that they all blend into the unrecognizable mass of sameness. Maybe they were just lacking unique mechanics, so each kind stood out more from the rest. I do not remember if it was better in previous Diablo games, but one thing I do know for sure. Boss encounters were much better in second and third game. In the newest title I could not tell the mechanics or even the looks of a boss if someone asked me by its name. Well, maybe besides Butcher, because he randomly ganks you from time to time. Blizzard could reuse some of the campaign main villains in the endgame, even if I think the fights with them were not very interesting too. At least we could have some more variety. I know that there is Uber Lilith, but I haven't faced her yet, as my highest character in the moment I write these words is only level 87. Yeah, I know, I'm a scrub and a casual and I should uninstall the game, but hear me out. Despite the time you invested in the game and the skill level you represent, we can come to the agreement that CC in this game is ridiculous to say the least. How many times we have died in the crowd of enemies not seeing that the big mob was casting big damage stun skill, and then we got frozen halfway through the stun duration if we were not feared in the first place. The next thing you know, your character corpse is laying on the dungeon floor before CC chain even ended, and before you could use your unstoppable skill to break out from it. Yeah, that's rough, and don't even get me started on off-screen damage. Oh boy. To make things even worse, if you can believe that, there is one affix in Nightmare Dungeons that keeps me awake at night, and when I see it, key gets grinded down without even thinking about it. Resource burn is the true ancient evil, and the fall of players since its conception. It should be removed from the game as soon as possible. It does nothing else but being a detriment to the game, and a major one at that. But it will not be removed, because Blizzard in their infinite wisdom decided to make it one of the seasonal mechanics. They gave you a malignant heart that you can socket into one of your free accessories, and it decreases the amount that is burned away. Decreases, not ceases completely. This is truly madness. Correction before video release. They seem to deactivate problematic affixes from Nightmare Dungeons in patch 1.1.1. I am shocked in a positive way if it comes to be. Also maddening is the amount of min-maxing your gear pieces. Blizzard this time around surpassed themselves and joined the industry leader in loot bonanza, namely Ubisoft with their infamous gear system from The Division 2. By this time I mentioned it so many times in my reviews that you may think that I really have PTSD from this looter shooter. Who knows, I would need to consult a medical professional in order to determine that. But that's beside the point. What is important is that imprinting legendary aspects system is an easy way to make you spend more time going through the loot gathered than is healthy for anyone. I just signed out from this, so I was using non-min-maxed gear and I was fine with that. I am refusing to spend my leisure time searching through the Squarespace and numbers. I got my household accounting for that kind of activity. Thanks, but no thanks, Blizzard. Okay, so you wanna go back to fun aspects of the game, to feel that enjoyment from the gameplay itself, but you completed all the quests already, what now? And here is when I think Diablo IV falls flat on its face. After you run out of story content there is nothing that gripping. In fact, I think that the presented world only loses on its value when you go and do your world quests and dungeons over and over again. I thought the rift system in Diablo 3 was bad, but there at least we had leaderboards and a real means to progress even when we plateaued. Yes, the hunting for perfect rift meta was annoying as all hell, but they could easily balance it way better by nerfing the instant quit affixes. But they did not, and I think the same will be in the newest title. Blizzard seems to not learn fast enough, and in some cases not learn at all. I almost forgot about another affix that makes me delete the Nightmare Dungeon sigil instantly. Backstabbers. Some genius in dev team thought it would be a great idea if the mobs did several times more damage to the player when hit from the back. In the isometric game where you move your character around all the freaking time and try to guess where is your back when you spin around playing Whirlwind Barbarian. The whole thing starts to look like a hallucination of a madman, or a rogue AI at best. Who thought it would be a good idea and who even tested this? Okay, in order to cool down, we need to talk about more pleasant elements of the game. So on the bright side we got even more accents in the full game, so I was right about that. Not only Slavs are gonna be blamed and shamed, cause we also got Scots, Irish and many more, from most of which I would not even dare to try to recognize. But even here we could not avoid some blunders. One of the quests in the main plot leads you to father and daughter, where an old man speaks with Scottish accent while his own child talks back to him in British. That seems problematic, but funny at the same time. I was laughing at least. Another good thing about the game is that it doesn't stray away from darker themes. On the contrary, both main plot and side stories are full of dark and gory elements. It is in stark contrast to Diablo 3, where we had rainbows and unicorns as an ultimate vengeance of developers. No, here we can clearly see inspirations from Diablo 2, Path of Exile and I think mostly from Wolves and Lords of Mayhem. Well, no wonder, Blizzard is at their best when they borrow someone else's homework and polish it highly, so it looks brand new on the first glance. I was really laughing out loud when in one point we got to travel by a coffin, like in Elden Ring. Hell yeah, go Blizzard! But I am afraid here is where my enthusiasm ends. We entered the seasonal content and each of the seasons gonna get its own set of borrowed powers that will not translate into the Eternal Realm. Sounds a lot like World of Warcraft not so long ago, and that didn't pan out exactly great. So far I enjoy Season 1 less than the base game, mainly because new gear mechanic with Malignant Hearts is making the inventory management even worse of a chore than it already was. I think I'm just gonna level my Barbarian on the Eternal Realm up to 100, wait for Season 2 and then check out the game again. Now let's talk about the technical state of things. After all, I made 3 benchmark videos for Diablo 4, which is the record for this channel. You see, what I like to do before I even start a new game is to go through all the option menus right away, and there is where I found the first change for the better since last beta test. Finally, you can unlock cutscenes from the horror of 30 FPS. Such a low framerate was a blasphemy, to put it mildly, at least for the PC players used to high refresh rates and fluid animations. And if we are already on the topic of cutscenes, character models look really good, especially faces. Lilith looks like an asset from high-value CGI productions for the needs of quality trailer. To be frank, the whole game looks great, especially on the higher settings. Best looking isometric ARPG at the moment for sure, but still some textures look low res even with hyper ultra extra high definition asset pack downloaded and set to the max. Sometimes I wonder if it was worth to make the installation to take twice as much of disk space. But besides the close-ups, you're most likely not gonna notice this, so it won't affect your gameplay. The next aspect, quality of sound. It is all very well done on a high level. Voice acting, sound effects, music. One thing I was not happy about was the mismatch of animations and sound effects in cutscenes. That needs to be fixed sooner or later, and I would much prefer it to be rather sooner than later. Great voice acting strengthens the atmosphere of a dark, gloomy world, full of demons, undead and other ugly things. Actors really deserve praises here. I buy their performances and I haven't heard anything that would be clearly not on par or distinctly below standard. We need to talk about animations for a moment here. In most cases they are very good and visually pleasing to the eye, but some of the attacks like Barbarian's lunging strike could use more animation variety for the sake of aesthetics of combat. On the other hand, some animations are marvelous. For example, Barbarian's run uphill is different than on flat terrain or even downhill. On the first glance they look very similar, but watchful eye can catch minor differences instinctively. It was very impressive to see. From other things I catch on to were some minor graphical glitches here and there, nothing to write home about. What concerns me more is that there are still many technical glitches and bugs, from quest scripting to enemy AI. Sometimes it's funny, like when the enemy elite, instead of using its attacks on you, just runs around in circle. It makes me laugh and I just insert Benny Hill running music for the scene in my head. That's all fun and jokes until you remember how many years have we waited for another Diablo game. So I hope they get their shit together and fix all the glaring issues in decent time. The most important thing right now would be performance. What do I mean by that? Well, if we looked to average frames per second alone, someone could say the game is very well optimized. But that is not the whole story. Micro-stuttering issue is not resolved after many months since the first beta test. Yes, it is definitely better than it was, but still far from perfect. It is most noticeable when galloping on your faithful steed, and no, changing to the lowest settings doesn't help much. Performance degrades as you play the game, so around every 2 hours it's time to reset the game. Most likely cause would be compounding memory errors, often called as memory leaks. Once I even got an error message, and that was the only time the game crashed on me. The message said I ran out of memory and suggested to lower the settings. At the time I was playing at 1080p Ultra with 32GB of RAM and 8GB of VRAM on RTX 3070. Changing to high preset helped, and I never saw that error message again. This is a sign of changing times, so my good advice for the near future would be to get as much RAM and as much VRAM in your next PC setup as you can afford. Winter is coming. Nostalgia mixed with modern gaming is what I would say if someone asked me to sum up Diablo 4 in one short sentence. On one hand we got the Diablo game that we wanted for so many years. On the other hand, some elements were modernized and in the bastardized way. This is the case when I need to split my recommendation in half. I would recommend this game for the people who want to play something good, get a few dozen hours of very decent gameplay during the campaign and side quest chains. Diablo fans and ARPG lovers gonna play it anyways, so no need to tell them what to do. But there is one group that will be greatly dissatisfied with the product we received, namely hardcore ARPG players. I am sorry to say, but Diablo 4's endgame is not fit to provide hundreds and thousands of hours of high quality, degenerate, no-life competitive online gameplay. It is simply not. Many mechanics need to be revised, quality of life assured and great content ready to be added. In the current state, we are very far from this title being the king of online entertainment, and for the hardcore ARPG players, I hope Path of Exile 2 will be much kinder to you. This is it, I've got nothing left for you this time around. I can only hope Blizzard will react accordingly to most of the valid criticism that community has for them, and that they will do their very best to improve the game. Who knows how many years we will need to wait for another entry in the series. But you know, for what you won't need to wait for years to come. Because I will see you soon in another Great Late Review.